The door groaned like a dying ox as Elias Harper pushed it open, the warped wood trembling under his hand. Dust burst from the hinges, catching the last orange streaks of sunset. The cabin's darkness yawned before him, thick as tar, air sour with mildew and mouse droppings. His boots sank into grit. The floor creaked, a slow complaint that echoed against the walls. He stood still, listening. Outside, the wind rasped over cactus needles. Inside, nothing, just the faint tick of some insect hiding in the walls. He took another step. The boards moaned louder. His hand brushed the doorframe. Flakes of dry wood crumbled under his fingers. He could smell age here. Age and something else, something coppery, metallic. The shadows shifted. A length of rope swung gently from the rafters, its frayed fibers glowing dull in the dying light. His breath caught. She was there, a giant girl, her bare feet inches above the floor, toes gray with dust. Her braids fell like black rivers past her shoulders, their ends tied with faded scraps of cloth. The rope cut cruel in her neck, skin stretched taut and dark. Her head lolled to the side, eyes half open, catching what little light crept through the broken shutters. The cabin shuddered with silence. Elias's jaw clenched, throat tight, as if the noose were his own. He did not move closer, though the impulse clawed at him. He had seen the dead before, fields of them, boys torn in half by cannon fire, men riddled with musket balls. But this was different. This was not the face of war. This was something left behind, something left to rot and be forgotten. The rope creaked. He froze. The air was still, not a breath of wind. Yet the rope swayed, slow and steady, as if pushed by unseen hands. His hand brushed the butt of his revolver. He cursed himself for it. A pistol was no use against ghosts, and the cabin felt heavy with them. He turned, forcing his eyes to the structure itself. Splintered beams, cobweb corners, the hearth black with soot. Along the nearest wall, faint scratches, symbols carved deep into the grain, circles and jagged lines he didn't recognize but felt, somehow, like warnings. The girl's shadow loomed long across the floorboards. It stretched toward him, swallowing the space between. He stepped back, boots crunching on broken glass. 12 cents, he thought. That's what he'd paid. 12 cents for this heap of timber in the dust. A laughable sum, thrown across a saloon table by a half-drunk land agent who wanted rid of it. Elias had thought it fortune, thought he might find peace at last in solitude. Now peace felt 1,000 miles away. A fly buzzed against the girl's cheek, circled, landed on her lip. The rope gave another groan, fibers straining. Elias's hand tightened on the doorframe until splinters bit his palm. "Lord have mercy," he muttered. The words fell flat, swallowed by the cabin's dark. A shiver crawled down his back. It wasn't the sight of her, not only that, it was the feeling that someone was watching through her eyes, watching from behind them. He swallowed hard, throat dry, and forced himself forward. The boards shifted beneath his boots. Each step echoed louder than the last, as if the cabin itself warned him back. His breath came sharp, shallow. At arm's length, he stopped. Her face was turned just enough that the last streak of daylight caught her cheekbone, a copper glow against the stillness of her skin. Her hands dangled at her sides, long fingers grazing air. She was taller than any woman he had ever seen, shoulders broad, frame strong even in death. She might have been a pillar holding the roof aloft, if not for the rope. A sudden pop, wood splitting. Elias flinched. A knot in the rafter cracked, releasing a sharp echo like a rifle shot. The girl's body shifted, swinging forward an inch, then back. Her braid brushed his chest. He staggered back, heart pounding. The rope creaked again, louder now, complaining under weight. Outside, coyotes wailed, their howls climbing together into a feverish pitch. The sound bled through the broken shutters, merging with the groan of the rope until Elias couldn't tell which was beast and which was timber. He stumbled out into the dusk, lungs straining for clean air. The desert sprawled before him, endless red earth cooling under the fading sun, mesas jagged like broken teeth, sky bruised purple. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the thud of his heart. The cabin loomed behind him, crooked and black against the horizon. The open doorway gaped like a wound. Elias spat into the dirt, more habit than relief. His shoulders sagged. His gaze drifted to the coin in his pocket, the one he'd flipped for the cabin. 12 cents. He could still hear it clink against the saloon table, hear the drunkard's laugh, cheaper than a funeral. A gust rose, tugging at his coat, rattling dry brush. The rope inside moaned once more. He stared at the cabin until the sun was gone and night bled full across the desert. Coyotes quieted. Crickets began their whisper. Still the image burned in his mind. The giant girl, her shadow too long, too heavy, too alive for a corpse. He turned away at last, walking toward the dim lights of Dry Creek. But the silence at his back clung to him, as if the cabin had swallowed part of his breath. And in that silence, he knew, the land had not finished with him. Not yet. The saloon doors slammed back against the walls, their hinges shrieking. Every head turned. Elias Harper stood in the doorway, shoulders bowed, hat brim low, dust clinging to the hem of his coat. Behind him the night wind carried grit and the faint howl of coyotes. Inside, the piano faltered mid-note. Glasses froze halfway to lips. The air smelled of cheap whiskey, gun oil, and sweat. He walked forward slow, spurs kissing the sawdust floor. Boards shifted under his boots, each step louder than the last. A chair scraped somewhere in the back, a gambler shifting uneasily. No one spoke. At the bar, Sheriff Calder leaned on his elbows, thick hands gripping a whiskey glass. His badge glinted in the lamplight, scratched and dulled from years of use. His eyes narrowed as Elias approached. "You didn't waste time," Calder said. Voice gravel dragged across stone. "Barely bought the place, and already the desert spits something at you." Elias didn't answer. He set his coin on the counter, a single cent, worn and scarred. The barkeep flinched at the sound, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. From the far corner, Reverend Pike rose, his black coat hanging like funeral drapes. His Bible slapped shut in his hand. "That cabin is cursed," he thundered, his words shaking the smoky air. "That girl was no child of God. She was a heathen giant, a scourge. Let her hang in silence, and pray her spirit does not walk." Murmurs rippled through the room. Boots shifted. Men spat into spittoons, trying to hide their unease. Elias's jaw flexed. "She didn't hang herself." The words cracked like gunfire. The room went still. Calder straightened, his whiskey glass still in hand. His lip curled into a grin that carried no warmth. "Careful, Harper. You're new to this dirt. You don't know the stories." Elias's eyes lifted to meet his. "I saw enough." The saloon's piano player struck a wrong chord, then went silent altogether. Somewhere outside, a wagon wheel screeched against gravel. From the shadow of the stairwell, Marisol Vega stepped forward. Her dress brushed the floor, simple cloth dusted from the road. She moved quiet, eyes steady, not on Calder, not on Pike, only on Elias. Her voice was low, careful. "Stories aren't always told true, senor. Sometimes the dust hides more than bones." Calder snapped his gaze to her, glass slamming against the counter. "Girl, you do well to keep your tongue behind your teeth." She didn't flinch. Her hand stayed folded before her, steady. "And you do well to remember not all tongues are yours to silence." The silence cracked. A drunk at the nearest table chuckled nervously, then smothered the sound under Calder's glare. Elias turned, eyes finding hers. The lantern light flickered against her face, catching the tired strength in her expression. He saw no fear there, only a weight she carried as if it were her own. He left the coin on the bar and stepped outside. The saloon doors flapped behind him, the room's whispers rising in his wake. The street lay empty under the moon. Wind tumbled dust across the main road, lifting scraps of paper, rattling shutters. Elias's boots dragged through it, heavy, each step stirring ghosts. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses bled out of the saloon and vanished into the wide silence of Dry Creek. Marisol followed him into the night. "It wasn't demons," she said, voice firm though her eyes swept the shadows. Her name was Kaya. She was daughter to a chief. taller than the men around her, stronger too. They feared her. Elias stopped. The desert air pressed down, dry and heavy. Feared her enough to string her up. Yes, Marisol whispered. But not because she was cursed. Because she saw too much. The wind picked up, flinging grit against Elias's coat. He squinted toward the horizon, the mesa's jagged black teeth in the moonlight. Behind him, a shutter banged open and shut, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. What did she see? He asked. Marisol's lips tightened. Bargains made in darkness. Promises broken. Men who would rather bury truth than face it. Her voice dropped lower, almost lost in the wind. They will come for you too, Elias Harper, because now you've seen her. The cabin's door slammed in the night, though no hand touched it. Elias jerked awake from his cot, sweat clinging to his temples. The air was heavy, the silence deeper than before. He reached for his revolver, but the weight of it felt small, useless. He sat up, listening. The rope creaked. He rose, each step slow across the floorboards. The moon bled through the broken shutter, silvering the dust. The rope swayed in the dark, creak, creak, though no wind moved the air. Her shadow lay across the planks, long and unbroken, stretching toward him. Symbols carved in the beams glimmered faintly in the moonlight, shapes he didn't know, but the sight of them prickled his skin. Circles within circles, jagged lines like lightning, patterns of warning etched deep by desperate hands. The cabin whispered, not in words but in weight, the sound of wood bending, nails groaning, breath rising from the cracks in the floor. Elias pressed a hand against the wall. The wood was cold. The rope groaned louder, fibers straining. Then silence. His breath rasped in the darkness. The sound seemed too loud, too alive, as though it did not belong to him. He backed away slow, revolver hanging loose in his grip, until his shoulders touched the doorframe. The desert stretched beyond, vast and empty, stars sharp against the black. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes began to howl again, their cries weaving with the cabin's silence until it felt like the earth itself had begun to speak. Elias stepped out into the night. He did not look back, but as he walked toward the faint lights of town, the whisper followed, soft as dust in the wind, brushing his ear. Not words, not yet, but a warning all the same. The church bell clanged, iron on iron, a hollow strike that rolled across Dry Creek like thunder. Doors opened. Boots scraped dust. Faces appeared in shadowed windows as the town gathered in the square. Sheriff Calder stood at the steps of the saloon, badge glinting, hat low. His hand rested on the butt of his revolver, fingers twitching with impatience. Reverend Pike loomed beside him, Bible raised like a weapon, black coat flaring in the hot wind. Elias Harper walked into the square. His coat flapped against his legs, his eyes hard as stone. Behind him, Marisol Vega followed, clutching a folded cloth against her chest. The crowd shifted uneasily. Men spat. Women crossed themselves. The air smelled of sweat and dust, and the faint sour bite of whiskey drifting from the saloon. Calder's voice cracked the silence. This is the fool who bought the devil's cabin. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, low and fearful. Elias stopped in the center, boots planted, coat brushing the grit. His eyes rose to meet Calder's. She had a name, he said. The words sliced the air. Pike's Bible slapped shut with a sharp crack. Blasphemy, the preacher barked. That creature was no child of God. Marisol stepped forward, her voice cutting against his thunder. Her name was Kaya. She was the daughter of Chief Taji. She came to this town under a white flag, asking for peace. Gasps rose. The square churned with whispers, boots shuffling, voices colliding. Elias's gaze swept the faces, weathered men, women with children clinging to their skirts, young guns with restless hands. Fear flickered in their eyes, not of ghosts, but of the truth pressing against the surface. Marisol unfolded the cloth in her hands. Inside lay a strip of woven beads, black and red, faded but intact. She held it high for all to see. Kaya wore this the day she was taken, she said. Her voice shook, but the words carried. They lured her with words of peace, then dragged her to that cabin. She never left it alive. Calder's jaw tightened. His fingers tapped the revolver. Enough lies. But Elias stepped closer, voice steady as a drawn blade. Not lies. History, carved into the beams of that cabin. Warnings, scratched with her own hands before the rope took her. The crowd swayed. Someone cursed under their breath. Another spat in the dirt. The wind picked up, lifting dust into their eyes. It whirled around them, tugging at coats and skirts, rattling loose shutters. In the hush between gusts, the noose creaked from across the desert, though no one was near the cabin. Heads turned at the sound, spines stiffening. Elias did not flinch. I saw her shadow walk. You've all heard it too. The land won't keep secrets. Not forever. Pike's face reddened, veins rising in his neck. The devil plays tricks, Harper. Best you leave before the devil plays them on you. But Calder barked over him, laughter sharp and cruel. You paid 12 cents for 12 graves, old man. That cabin's nothing but a tomb. And you'll be in it soon enough if you don't keep your tongue. The threat hung heavy. Hands drifted toward belts, toward knives and pistols. The crowd shifted like a restless herd, not yet stampeded but close. Marisol's voice cut through again, softer but sharper than steel. You cannot bury what you did forever. The hush deepened. Calder stepped down from the saloon porch, boots thudding against the ground. He stood only feet from Elias, breath hot with whiskey, eyes burning with something beyond anger, fear. You keep stirring this dust, Calder said, low and dangerous, and it'll choke you. Best walk away. Elias's hand hovered near his revolver, but did not draw. His voice was quiet, but it carried. I've walked away from enough graves. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the creak of signs swinging in the wind. Somewhere a horse stamped and whinnied. Calder's sneer cracked into a snarl. Then you'll meet yours soon. He turned, spitting into the dirt, and stalked back into the saloon. Pike followed, muttering prayers that sounded more like curses. The crowd broke apart, uneasy, muttering, eyes darting toward the desert horizon where the cabin crouched in shadow. Mothers pulled children inside. Men dragged on cigarettes, smoke curling through the dusk. Elias stood alone in the square, Marisol at his side. The dust still swirled. The whispers of the crowd faded, replaced by another whisper, low, almost beneath hearing. A woman's voice carried on the wind, syllables in a tongue he could not know, but the weight of it pressed on his chest. He looked west, toward the cabin. The horizon shimmered under the rising moon. For a heartbeat, he saw her, the giant girl, Kaya, striding across the desert, her braids trailing, her shadow long against the earth. He blinked. The desert was empty. Only dust. Only silence. Marisol's hand touched his arm, firm, steady. She will not rest until justice comes. Elias nodded once, slow. His face was stone, but in his eyes something stirred, a spark long buried, now catching flame. The cabin waited. The land waited. And Dry Creek, though it did not yet know it, stood on the edge of reckoning. Flames clawed up the cabin walls, spitting sparks into the night. Gunfire cracked through the desert air, sharp and relentless. Elias Harper burst from the doorway, rifle leveled, smoke rising from the barrel. The fire behind him roared, swallowing the roof beam where the rope still swung. Bullets ripped through the dark. Wood splintered. Sand kicked up around his boots. He dropped to one knee, fired once, twice. Two shadows tumbled in the dust, their revolvers clattering from their hands. Sheriff Calder's voice thundered over the chaos. Burn it down. Leave nothing standing. Men circled the blaze, coats snapping in the hot wind, torches in their fists. The glow of the fire painted their faces red, eyes glinting with madness and fear. Elias reloaded with steady hands. The motions old, familiar, burned into muscle. He rose, coat flaring, rifle to his shoulder. His shot rang out. One man spun and collapsed, torch falling, flames licking the sand. The night shook with howls. Coyotes wailed from the mesas, their cries weaving with the roar of fire and the crack of gunpowder. Elias moved forward through the smoke, his eyes burning, jaw clenched. Every step pressed deeper into the dust, Boots, leaving prints the firelight could not erase. Another gunman rushed from the side. Elias's revolver barked. One shot, clean and final. The man crumpled at his feet. The heat from the cabin beat against his back. Sparks hissed in his hair. The noose above the beam groaned once more before the roof gave way with a deafening crash. The fire lit the desert like day. Calder emerged from the smoke, his revolver gleaming, teeth bared in a wolf's grin. "You think you can stand against Dry Creek?" "Against me?" Elias's breath was steady, chest rising slow. His rifle hung at his side now, grip shifting to the revolver at his hip. "I stand for her," he said. The words cut through the fire's roar. Calder spat, lifting his gun. The crowd of hired men fanned out, their weapons aimed, but hesitation rippled through them. Fear of the fire, fear of the figure who walked unseen among the flames. For she was there, tall as the roof beams had been, hair braided down her shoulders, eyes burning like embers in the smoke. Kaya's shadow stretched across the desert floor, towering, unbroken. The men faltered. One dropped his torch. Another staggered back, muttering prayers. Elias stood firm, the giant girl's shadow cast behind him, the two shapes merging in the firelight. Old soldier and fallen daughter of the desert. Gunfire erupted. Elias moved with grim precision, each shot tearing through the storm. He fought without waste, every bullet finding its mark. The desert filled with smoke, cries, the thud of bodies hitting sand. When the echoes fell still, only Calder remained. He stood panting, revolver trembling in his grip, face streaked with sweat. His badge gleamed dull in the firelight, a relic of authority twisted by blood. Elias stepped closer, boots grinding in the dust. Kaya's shadow loomed at his back, stretching long, taller, endless. Calder's breath broke into a laugh, wild, desperate. "She's dead, Harper. Dead and gone. You can't fight a ghost." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then it's you against both of us." The fire roared higher. Coyotes screamed from the ridges. Calder raised his revolver with a snarl, finger tightening on the trigger. Elias fired first. The shot echoed like thunder rolling across the mesas. Calder staggered, fell hard to the dirt, his badge catching the last light before slipping into shadow. Silence fell. The fire crackled. Ash rained from the collapsing roof, glowing embers drifting into the dark sky. Elias lowered his weapon. His shoulders sagged. He turned toward the cabin. Nothing left now but flame and ruin. The noose burned away, rope falling in sparks to the floor. For a moment, through the smoke, he saw her. Kaya, standing tall, her braids swaying, her gaze locked on him. She did not speak. She only nodded, once slow, before fading into the firelight. Elias stood alone in the dust, chest heaving, eyes burning. The desert night held still, as if the earth itself bowed in silence. They tell it different ways in Dry Creek. Some say the fire consumed him too, that Elias Harper walked into the cabin's blaze and never returned. Some swear they saw a giant Apache girl fight beside him, her shadow cast against the flames, her voice calling in a tongue long lost. Others say he lived, wandering the mesas with her shadow at his side, two restless spirits bound by the same rope of justice. But all agree on this. Sheriff Calder was never seen again, and the cabin burned to ash that night. And if you stand in the desert when the moon is high, with the wind crawling through the cactus, you may hear the rope creak. You may see the dust shift. You may glimpse a tall figure walking beside an old soldier, both shadows long as eternity. They say a man bought a cabin for 12 cents. But the price he paid was more, and what he earned was a legend.